Hi, I'm Jeff Zacharski.
And I'm Jason Primrose.
And welcome to Gentlemen, the #1 podcast for open-hearted leadership.
We are freaking back. Oh my gosh.
Can you believe it? This is insane. That whole year.
It's so insane. Yeah, it's been a whole year. I remember, when you wanted to do this idea, and I was like, ooh, this sounds fun. We started this podcast to bring more connection to the world and even to each other. And over the last year, it's been so interesting to get feedback around people listening to the show and seeing reviews. It's really, really cool. So I feel like we're doing what we set out to do. And I think that's why we came back to do it again in a bigger way. So people are looking for more opportunities to open their minds and open their hearts, connect with each other. I definitely felt like 2021 was different from 2020, and people are starting to wake up to what's possible in terms of what they can have for their lives, and what types of relationships they can have with each other. That's what I'm seeing in my circles, which has been really cool, even from people that I maybe lost touch with or have known a long time. So I know that these conversations are important, and they work to help people see something different.
Yeah. I think for me, when I look at 2020, when we were having this conversation about creating this, 2020 was such a year of disconnection. And then 2021 created this idea of reconnection for me. And what does that even look like? And what can we put out there? What can I put out there that's going to help with that? So I love that when we were having that conversation about this wild idea, it's like, hey, I got this idea where we can create this podcast that can be for men to help them open their hearts after they've been drastically just slammed shut with all of these life circumstances. And we can create a platform to have conversations to make a difference. And I truly believe that these conversations would have and definitely would have made a difference even prior to 2020. But there's just something special about stepping out of such a disruption to set a new foundation. And that's, to me, why I'm really excited to be back. And one, thank you again for coming back for season 2, because I originally thought about doing this maybe by myself. And then we had this conversation. I'm like, no, it's clear. I cannot do this by myself. And I don't want to do this by myself. If we're going to do something that's about connection, then I want to do it with somebody that I have such an amazing connection with. And we have such a past with our history. We've talked about it on previous episodes. But in service of getting reconnected to something, what was really important for me in 2021, coming out of such a disruption, was to recreate a new foundation. So for me, 2021 was about setting a new foundation in my life across all of these different pillars that we got to have a conversation about in season 1. And now we've set that foundation. Both of our lives look completely different. And now we get the opportunity to build on that foundation. So that's why I'm back. I'm hoping that our listeners go back and they listen to season 1 and they take that in as a way of setting a foundation. And now we get to actually build on that new concrete foundation to build up. And there's just so much more available when you can build on a sturdy foundation.
Yeah, I agree completely. The foundational pillars for gentlemen, you need to copyright that. Copyright and trademark. So yes, thank you for joining us. If you want more in the form of community, you can follow us on Instagram, Gentlemen the Podcast. You can join our private group on Facebook by searching Gentlemen the Podcast. It's actually public now. And I think we're going to join Twitter. So we'll get you that handle.
Wait, is that a thing? Wait, hold on. Is that a thing again? I'm just a little bit out of the loop. You're more in the social, what? Tell me about why Twitter is coming back right now.
So the reason I got back on Twitter is because of NFTs. We'll get into that later. The reason I got back on Twitter is because of NFTs, and Twitter also launched an audio interface called Twitter Spaces to compete with Clubhouse. And because apparently they offered Clubhouse like some billion, maybe 4 billion, something crazy to buy them, and they declined. And then I think it was Twitter. And
can you imagine being in that moment where someone's like, hey, here's $4 billion. And we're like, no, pass.
No, we got it. Well, their valuation, I think, was a little bit higher at the time, is what I heard. Because when it came out, it was like, whoa. But they grew so fast. So, but now I don't know. They're worth that. Like, they should have sold it. So anyway, yes, Twitter will be a thing. The thing about Twitter is that Twitter has a really strong sense of community there. Instagram is very much like a passive engagement tool, especially at this point. And so Twitter gives people opportunity to like retweet, respond. You can open spaces, from your profile, and, people can join in. So like I said, IG Live it kind of does it, but like it's really meant to be an observing platform. Like, you're meant to be idolizing, I guess, in some way, the people that you follow. Like, you're like looking at all the highlights, and they get on live, and you're kind of in the comments, like an audience, Whereas Twitter Spaces gives you the opportunity to like come up on stage and like talk to people, but more than, 3 other people, which Instagram is limited to 4 people at a time. So I've seen it. It's been very interesting being on there last month and seeing it all, and just being able to like pop into conversations, and it's way more interesting to me than popping in on a live or something like that for some reason, even though I have a live show on Instagram.
We'll talk about that later too.
Yeah, there's a lot. So anyway, we'll be on all the socials that are relevant right now: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And you might even see us on TikTok.
Oh,
we'll have to talk about that.
Okay. I'm gotta tell you, I'm like not even 100% sure how that would go, but let's just say, whenever we have an opportunity to get uncomfortable, the opportunity is just to say yes and to do it anyway. Like, that's what we did here. We're just like, how are we going to create this podcast? I don't know, but I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to play inside the yes. And here we are, a whole season done, ready to jump into season 2 with more guests, more content, more value, deeper vulnerability. And I don't even know where we're going to be at the end of the season, but I do know it's going to be amazing.
Yes, it will be. Whew.
Deep breath.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going to be.
Can we just also lay the foundation in this episode that Jason is going to likely have a different background in every single episode because he is mobile. And so we get to, maybe we'll even create a game about guessing about like what the background is going to be next. And that he's so committed to being on these podcasts that he has a mobile rig that he's bringing with him so that we can stay connected, whether he's here, whether he's in Portugal, any of these places.
Yes, that's going to be very fun. I could just do a green screen, but no, I'd rather have people guess like, oh, where's Jason now?
This is way better.
Yeah, it's way better. Okay, can you tell everyone like high level who you are? You can read the bio I wrote for you if you want.
Yeah, that's like my analyzer brain telling me to read a pre-scripted thing as opposed to like doing what we speak about, which is like try and drop in and talk about what's relevant. So I'm actually going to I'm not even going to attempt that. I'm going to do that. Who I am has actually even fundamentally changed since the beginning of this, through this new foundation that I've set. So who I am, clearly I'm a podcast host with Jason here, but I am a man that's committed to transformation. I'm a transformational leader. I am a man of heart and vulnerability, of power and courage, and really somebody that trusts my own intuition and bravery. And what that's created in my life and how I source my life as I work as an executive coach, I started running transformational retreats last year in the heart of the jungle in Costa Rica, which we will talk about, I'm sure, at some point. But I am committed to disruption, and I am committed to connection and unity and oneness across humans. And part of the way that I do that is by being on this podcast and stretching myself into these new domains. So that's who I am. And see, that wasn't even, and none of that was even on the script. So I want to pass the torch over to you and have you give a swing as well.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Good.
I would
then you get to create
say
it.
fundamentally who I am is like a person of wild imagination and creativity, and how that manifests in my life is like anything is possible. Normally when I get out of my own way, especially it's possible, but I believe that what I embody is like joy, compassion, connection, love, vulnerability, and honesty. And so that comes out in my writing, which I'm an author. I write sci-fi fantasy novels, which is really fun. And I would call them transformative speculative fiction, if that's even a genre.
It is
because
now.
I write I write the novels with a built-in framework for like people kind of seeing themselves inside the story and inside the characters, in a more intentional way, because of course people write characters for people to identify with them, but the book that I wrote recently asks you questions as a reader at the end of every major arc, so that you kind of feel what the characters are going through and you start to like think about your own life. So transformational fiction. And I'm also now the CEO of a Web3 company, which is super, super weird to say. And that's very new. And the co-host of this amazing podcast, which definitely fulfills my aspiration to one day become an Oprah-like person. And just being able to get real with people and go deep with people and really move a lot of stuff out of the way and allow people to be themselves in their lives and in conversations with other humans. And then I also do like live shows where I connect with other creators in the comic book space and cosplay and like all the nerd spaces. And I'm also starting a Twitter space room called Becoming Evolutionary, which is essentially an opportunity for artists to be real about like what happens and what they're experiencing in this new NFT space. So yeah, there's a lot of connection. It's really awesome.
What I love about that is what results have manifested this year as a result of being that over the last year. I know we were both talking about, where our businesses were when we started this podcast and some of the aspirations and some of these things that we were forecasting in the future. And a lot of what you shared didn't exist. Like author, book, yes, like the book is amazing. It's out there, but like what you have built based on how you have shown up time and time again, committed to that vision for you is now we actually get to be with like the results that you're sharing are actualized.
Yes, they are.
And like we get to celebrate that, right? Like, oh
yeah,
my gosh, like
it's so cool.
That was just an idea.
Yeah.
It was just an idea a year ago.
That's really true. Yes, when we were recording the first episodes of the podcast, I was doing the Kickstarter for 2050Z, and I believe that it was only published like near the end of the season, And then there was that 4 months that I went on tour to the different Comic-Cons at the end of the year. And yeah, it's been really, really interesting because, and I don't know if you've experienced this, and I want to hear your update, because I keep saying to myself, this is what I want for my life. Like, this is what I actually called to me. And now I'm like present to the fact that, like, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than me now. Like, I said to my best friend, David, I was like, this isn't my baby anymore. And he was like, oh my God, you are a CEO. He didn't believe me at first. And I was like, no, this isn't my baby anymore. Like, yeah. So what do you feel has been, I guess, like, the biggest change for you over the last year?
I think the biggest change is how I experience myself. I think when we got on this conversation a year ago, it was trying to be all of these things, like trying to be somebody that could lead spaces, trying to be somebody that would have a voice and bring them to a podcast, trying to be somebody that was able to lead powerfully and support in my relationship, and like feeling like I was on a teetering point. And where I am now is all of that. And kind of like you were mentioning about, this was an idea. What I have in my life right now are some really serious and powerful partnerships that are driving the results of my life. Like how my business has, I don't know, 4x'd over the last year, with the amount of people that I get to work with and the amount of money that I make. And not that it's about the people and the money, but I am clear that I am making the impact in different spaces. So what's possible, and also the retreats and understanding. So I had this vision. So I got this one retreat off the ground. It was like one of the most amazing things that I've ever taken out of my head and my heart and my soul and put into practice. And let me tell you, that thing came to life in 60 days. There is at the beginning of last year, that was impossible to think that I could do something like that, to take a group of men to Costa Rica to run a 5-day retreat and to lead them through this experience that would have them come out completely transformed. And because I was willing to do that, like who I had become over the last year, one, being willing to take the risk, being willing to have it fall flat on my face and like only have one person, that would have been terrible. But I didn't. And as a result of it, now the next vision, which I didn't see possible until I stepped into this, the vision is that within 5 years, I'll be running these retreats on all 7 continents at the same time. Which requires me to grow a community, it requires me to grow a staff, and it really requires me to step into the CEO-ness of that experience. Because I'm clear that I won't be able to be in 7 places at the same time. But I'm really humbled by it. But who I've become is somebody that is willing to take the risk to step into the next disruption for my own life, to clear a path to then see what's possible out of that. I would have never had the vision to see the 7 continents if I hadn't been willing to risk myself to step into this domain. And so that's the thing for me, is that's what's really become possible over the next year, is like, who do I get to be as a CEO is even different now than what I thought I could be when I said that I wanted to be, or I thought that I wanted to become. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you had an idea in your head of what a CEO looked like and who you would look like as a CEO. And even that had a glass ceiling. And like,
completely.
Now you're just like, it could look like anything. And it looks like you know, it looks like this big. I mean, 7 continents. Yeah. Going from...
I have no idea how either.
No idea how. I mean, I love this because we talked about like framing our conversations this season around ways to like be about the foundational pillars that were created. So today we were talking about like having a growth mindset, like have a growth mindset. So it's interesting to know that like what it looks like is 7 continents, 7 retreats, all at the same time, like men all over the world being transformed. It's like, it's awesome. That's really awesome. I think too is like, what will it take from you to, you know, like what will it take from you? What does it require?
It requires, well, I like from the tangible side of thing, it requires a team, right? Like I can't be in 7 places at the same time. It requires a community, people that see value in doing this kind of work for themselves and to be in support of other men. And so like, those are the tangible things that I can see, but now it's like, okay, well, who do I get to be to create that? And I think that's what you're asking. It's like, it's in order to, who would I be being up at that 5 years as opposed to just that next step? I mean, I would be being international level CEO and leader of teams and leader of men. And I would have such a relationship to commitment and integrity in my life that I would be doing everything that I said that I was going to be doing. I would have transformed all of my fears about what's actually possible in my life and risk all of these survival conversations in my head around messing it up, looking stupid, you know, having any sense of control around it. Like I literally would have had to risk my internal shame to create something like this. And on the other side, what I would really need to empower is really getting connected to this vision, really getting connected to my heart and why this matters for people to do this kind of work. And what this will create in the world. I imagine that when this thing goes off and you have large groups of men in every continent doing something, like I imagine it being like a radio tower of like transformation and elevation and like, what's it called? Just like releasing of shame. And I just imagine like if you were to watch this energetically from space, like I feel like you could feel that. And I feel like you could measure. I mean, why not? Like that's what I'm committed to creating, something so powerful that there's something that happens in the earth. And so who that requires me to be is relentless and completely risky and unrealistic all the time.
Yeah. Unrealistic. I think like a large, like an unprecedented level of trust.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
like you've never seen before.
Yeah. And you know, trust
and
trust,
accountability.
Yeah. And trust with joy. Because I think I heard this the other day where we choose this idea of trust in our lives. And the more that we choose it, it's if I only trust, if I only trust, if I only trust, or if I beach, like it starts to get heavy. Like trust starts to get this thing that like we have to like evoke and it has to erupt out of us. But in my experience, if we're joyful and trusting at the same time, it gets to be lightness. And like, I don't know I know what it's like for me, but I'm curious for you. Like, if you're joyful and trusting at the same time, how is that different than like, gotta trust, gotta trust, gotta trust?
Well, I was just going to say, even saying that, I realized that we relate to trusting something else as a bad thing, like in my framing of it. Mm-hmm. And almost as if at some point your trust will be betrayed. So it's like, you really got to trust.
Nice.
But also that, with the idea that like trust could be broken, and then you would then be required to continue to trust even in that. So it's interesting, because the reality of the matter is like people aren't perfect. And so trust will be broken, and you get to keep trusting because the vision is big enough and people are committed to it, that the vision is big enough and clear enough and people are committed to it. And that's the lens through which you move through. I'm actually having some challenges with trust right now. So that's interesting because, to me, I've been relating to trust as something being taken from me. And I say that to mean like to trust is to give. And while I'm a very generous person, trust is something that I'm like not sure about, especially with certain things. So like I said, with lost children, it's not my baby anymore. So I am giving trust to the people that are collaborating with me on this project. And there's some people that haven't been showing up as powerfully as I know they can. And that has come into conflict with the trust that I'm giving, and it has not been joyful. I would say that it has not been joyful. It's been really challenging because I see myself a lot in this person, and I see myself a lot in the dynamic, similar to the dynamics that I've had with old founders. And now I'm like, oh, well, this is how my analyzer brain, I have one too. This is how he was showing up, or they were showing up. This is how I was showing up, but it's really a disempowering dynamic. So it's like, well, okay, well, what do I get to shift in me first to create a new outcome? And so I think it really goes back to trusting myself. And like I said, for the first time, my mom gave me some radical feedback yesterday. And she was like, aren't you a leader? You're showing up to me as afraid to be a leader, to be the leader that you are. And like, what do you like, this is you're complete. This is yours, like your project, everything. And you have all the power you need to create the outcome that you want. And I was like, that's true. I'm like, that's the responsibility, right? That's the growth mindset too, because you can't be like, I can't be a victim to the circumstance or to the person or to what's not happening. It's like, we don't have time for that. We literally don't have time for that. Like, I'm trying to be a millionaire by the end of the year. So I don't have time for that.
Are you declaring that right here, right now?
Yeah. And so I think like, going back to what, like your vision, your 5-year vision, like in 5 years, Lost Children of Andromeda is bigger than Harry Potter, like literally. In 5 years, we are about to release a TV show, limited series. There's probably a movie in the works. We have multiple graphic novels. It'll take me longer than 5 years to finish the series, but I would love to. I would have at least 5 books done by that point, wow, which we would be halfway through. And yeah, I mean, we would be in a good place. We'd be in a really great place. and we'd be touring Gentlemen, the podcast. I've heard of podcasters doing this, which was really fun, like workshops and conferences. And so, yeah, I just, I don't know. So having a growth mindset, or what I'm learning is like, well, I can't place this small when my vision's that big. And part of it is letting go of the old story and really being committed, like you said, like commitment to the vision. And that means that people really get to step up into, like, we're all evolutionary. So we're bringing full potential in this here. There's no, and how do we get people there? Not like forcing them, shaming them into it, but like, how do we get them to see where they can stretch, where they can be powerful, and then actually activate them in that?
Yeah. Can I just say that, well, I'm going to say it anyway. Can I just say how I love that you've created such a relationship with your mom, that she will call you forward? Like, I imagine, what we're talking about here is growth mindset. And sometimes we don't see what's happening. Sometimes I don't see what's happening. And to have somebody that loves me and cares about me enough in my life to come call me out with some feedback that helps re-evoke that fire in me and helps me remind me, oh yeah, I am committed to this. Oh yeah, this is my vision. Oh yeah, that is this. She just did that. She just did that for you. And inside of your own family. And I think it's so important for people with growth mindsets to be involved with like-minded people and community and people that are willing to meet them at that level. And the reality is that everybody's in a different place in their journey. But if they have a commitment to elevating, if they have a commitment to being courageous, if they have a commitment to the people that they're supporting, we can go anywhere. I can go anywhere. You can go anywhere. And so when I think about the growth mindset aspect, and how that's played a role even in our last lives, like we have transformed, we have flipped ourselves inside out. We have found ourselves naked in the streets, metaphorically, maybe not. But we have actually really stepped up. And that's what I love about this podcast and where we get to go next. So if that's what we've built, now we get to go somewhere next. And when we talk about trust, like, trust is inherently needed. Self-trust, trust in other people, other humans that have their own stuff, and trying to create partnerships and relationships and feedback and accountability inside of a structure like that, but to really support so that we all get to rise together. And I think about trusting in others there. And then I also think about trusting in something even bigger than us. And that's a conversation for a whole nother realm, but trusting in the universe, trusting in God, trusting in mushrooms, psychedelics, like whatever the thing is, but trusting in something that creates a higher level of consciousness, because I truly believe that connection is just as important, whatever it is for you or for me, as it is that connection to yourself. And some would actually even argue that they're one of the same. So for trusting in this moment, I'm hearing you step into what trust gets to look like from here for you with all of these partnerships to make this work. So what's the new relationship to trust that you're committed to creating?
It's the opportunity to have trust and accountability actually work together to strengthen, trust, accountability, and honesty to work together to bring things closer, to create more cohesion and connection, rather than have trust in the natural occurrence of trust maybe not being broken create resentment. So my relationship now is like trust, resentment, disconnection, right? So what I'm creating is trust, accountability, honesty, and connection. And like those things will bring it all together. Like magnets turn the other way.
Yeah. What do you expect that will open up?
I believe that it will open up opportunity to really see people and also really see when things aren't working and be responsible for them and not like, oh, it was this and this and this. So it's like, it's part of being a CEO. It's part of building this big vision, you know, it's there's going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of ups and downs. And I think when I get too attached to people, not that I think you shouldn't be, but when people aren't showing up, part of the accountability is saying like this isn't, this actually isn't working. And so I think that's going to take a lot of courage. And again, trust in myself that like I'm making the decision that's best for the vision and best for the person too, I think, and best for myself. Because I mean, for me, any time I've left a project or been removed, I learned something, a lesson at some point. Once I got out of the blaming of the other party, I got really clear on like, oh, well, maybe this is how I could see how I wasn't showing up here, and here. And it becomes more and more clear to me as I continue down my journey. So I think that like, yeah, just all like a lot of trust, a lot of courage, and yeah, because it's no small mountain to climb where I want to go.
Yeah. And what I can acknowledge is you're willing and committed to doing what's needed.
Mm.
And
yeah.
Which includes being courageous and vulnerable in relationship, in service of the in service of the vision. So, I think if I tie kind of where we are now as we wrap up to some of the past season is what in a lot of what you shared, I heard a lot of the different pillars actually coming into play when it came to courage and vulnerability and relationship and integrity, and how you have taken the equation of your relationship to trust and rebuilt it in a way that is actually in service of the relationship. And so I encourage our listeners is to listen to what Jason is saying here. This is really valuable, and go back to the previous episodes and see what you get there, because that's where we're starting to start the foundation and bring that work into these conversations here. Because when we are building on this foundation and when we use the tools, they work, and you can build whatever it is that you want to build.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You polished that off so nicely, as always. Okay, so we'd love to know what you're taking from this conversation, and we'd love to hear about it. So you can comment on our Instagram. You can respond to our future Twitter account, and you can also comment on in the Facebook group. We always champion celebration and acknowledgement, so we'll make sure you are seen and responded to. And we just want people to share their voices, and open up about what's opening up for them. So I think that's everything that we have.
I think we can wrap
today.
it up and close it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our episodes will be dropping. If you're listening to this, we're in March, and we'll be dropping episodes every Tuesday. So add on the notifications. Send us an email, like Jason said. Hit us up on Instagram because we want to be connected to you. And with that, we will close out this episode and see you next week.
See you next week.